the restaurant went completely silent. Not the polite quiet of people pretending not to notice something. The specific complete silence of 200 people, simultaneously understanding that something was happening that they were all going to remember. Zara Collins stood in the middle of the most expensive restaurant in Midtown Manhattan in a black dress she had saved 3 months to buy, her hands frozen at her sides, her eyes straight ahead, and on her head where her wig had been 30 seconds ago there was nothing. Just her. Just the smooth, beautiful curve of her bare head, catching the warm restaurant light. Just her face, which was the most beautiful face in the room and always had been and always would be, with or without the hair that cancer had taken from her at 31 years old. She did not move. She did not reach for the wig that Nicole's hand had just sent sliding across the marble floor. She did not cry. She stood completely still. She had learned a long time ago that the moments in which you most want to disappear are exactly the moments that require you to stay. The silence stretched. Every pair of eyes in the restaurant was on her. Every pair except one. Kang Min-yi was not looking at her bare head. He was looking at Nicole, with an expression that made Nicole take one step back before she had consciously decided to. He stood up from the table. He picked up the wig from the floor. He walked to Zara. He stood before her. He held out the wig. And then he said, quietly enough that only she could hear but clearly enough that the table nearest them caught every word, "Don't touch her." He was not speaking to Zara. He had not taken his eyes off Nicole. He placed the wig gently in Zara's hands. Then he looked at Zara. Directly. At her face. At her bare head. At all of her. And his expression did not change. Not 1 degree. Not one flicker. He looked at her, the way a man looks at something that has just confirmed something he already knew. "Are you all right?" he said. She looked at him. She was not all right. She was standing in a restaurant with 200 people staring at her, and her wig in her hands, and the specific cold horror of having the thing she had been most afraid of happen in the most public way possible. But she looked at this man, at the way he was looking at her. And she said, yes. He nodded. He turned back to the table. He sat down. He picked up his menu, as though the most natural thing in the world was to continue dinner. Zara stood for one more moment. Then she put her wig back on. She sat down, and the restaurant slowly went back to its evening. Nicole was already gone. But I need to take you back, because nothing about this moment makes sense without understanding how Zara Collins ended up at that table. And the answer begins, as most of the important things in Zara's life began, with her daughter. Amara Collins was 5 years old and had been the most remarkable person in every room she entered since the day she arrived. Not in the loud way. In the specific quiet way of someone who saw things that other people missed and said them with the complete calm of someone who had not yet learned that some truths were supposed to be kept to yourself. She had her mother's cheekbones and her absent father's eyes, and a quality of attention that made adults check what they were doing when she walked into a room. She had been asking about her father since she was 3. Zara had answered honestly at each age in the way appropriate to that age. At 3, Daddy lives somewhere else. At 4, Daddy made a choice and the choice wasn't us. That's about him, not about us. At 5, 2 weeks before the night at the restaurant, Amara had sat at the kitchen table with her drawing and said without looking up, "Mama, when is the man coming?" Zara had looked at her daughter. "What man?" she said. "The one who stays," Amara said. She turned a page in her sketchbook, "the one who isn't scared." Zara had looked at her 5-year-old daughter for a long moment. She had thought about Derek. Derek Washington had been Zara's boyfriend for 2 years, the relationship that had produced Amara and then ended when the diagnosis came. Not immediately. He had stayed for 2 months after she told him. 2 months of the specific withdrawal of a man who had decided something and was working up to saying it. Then he had said it. He had said he couldn't do this. He had said he wasn't strong enough for this kind of thing. He had said he hoped she understood. He had left. Amara was 7 months old. Zara had looked at her infant daughter and made a decision about what the rest of her life was going to look like. She was going to survive. She was going to raise this child completely. She was not going to let what Derek had done become the story she told herself about what she was worth. She had almost kept that promise. Almost. The almost was the part that arrived in the quiet moments. The part that said, in the specific voice of someone who has been left at their most vulnerable, maybe he was right. Maybe this is too much to ask of anyone. Maybe you are something to be survived rather than chosen. She had not told her daughter any of this. She had told her daughter, we are enough, just us. We are completely enough. Amara had absorbed this and believed it, and also, apparently, had decided it was incomplete. The one who stays, she said, the one who isn't scared. Then she went back to her drawing. Zara had met Nicole 8 years ago. They had been colleagues at New York Presbyterian, where Zara worked in hospital administration and Nicole worked in patient services. They had become friends in the specific way of two women who spend enough time in the same building that friendship becomes the path of least resistance. Nicole was beautiful. She had always known she was beautiful and had organized significant portions of her life around this knowledge. She was also, Zara had understood for several years, but had been too tired and too grateful for the friendship to fully acknowledge, deeply competitive in the specific way of someone who needed to be the most impressive person in any shared space. When Zara was well, Nicole was a good friend. When Zara was sick, Nicole had been better than some and worse than others, and Zara had accepted this because she did not have the energy to audit her friendships during chemotherapy. Now Zara was in her second round of treatment. The first round 3 years ago had produced 18 months of remission. The cancer had come back in her left breast 6 months ago. She was in treatment again. She was tired in the specific way of a person managing something enormous while also working full-time and raising a 5-year-old alone. She had not told most people. She had told Nicole because Nicole had found out by accident, seeing the medication in Zara's bag on a Thursday afternoon. She had made Nicole promise not to tell anyone. Nicole had promised. Nicole had also, over the following 3 months, introduced Zara to every single man she thought might be suitable because, as she said with the specific warmth of a woman performing generosity, you deserve to have someone, especially now. What Zara had not understood until much later was that each introduction was also a competition. Nicole had not introduced Zara to men she thought would be good for Zara. She had introduced Zara to men she was interested in herself, in situations where she could control the comparison. It had always worked before. Zara was beautiful, but she was quiet about it. She did not perform or compete. She worked and raised her daughter and managed her health and came to social events in the wig that she wore so naturally that most people who met her after the diagnosis never knew. She was not a threat. Or she had not been. Until Min Yi. Kang Min Yi had arrived in New York from Seoul 6 months ago. He was there for the American expansion of Kang Group's medical technology division, a 2-year posting that he had accepted because staying in Seoul had become something he could no longer do. His wife had died 4 years ago. Her name had been Jaeyeon. She had been 32 years old, and she had died of the same cancer that his company's new division was now developing diagnostic technology to detect earlier. He had thrown himself into the work with the specific devotion of a man who has found the only form of grief that feels like action. He had not dated. He had not tried. He had moved through New York with the controlled forward motion of someone who had decided that forward was the only direction available and had committed to it completely. His mother had been unwell. Mrs. Kang had been diagnosed with a chronic digestive condition 2 years ago that had resisted every treatment and had left her thin and exhausted, and more worryingly to Min Yi, without appetite. She had come to New York with him and lived in the penthouse and was attended by a rotating staff of nurses and the best gastroenterologist in the city, and had not eaten a full meal in 7 months. She had also, in the way of Korean mothers of a certain generation, decided within 48 hours of meeting Nicole at a charity event that Nicole was the appropriate next wife for her son. Nicole had encouraged this. Min Yi had not discouraged it, because discouraging his mother required energy he did not have. He had agreed to the dinner. He had not known Zara would be there. Nicole had not mentioned a fourth person would be joining them. Zara had not wanted to come. She had a presentation on Friday. Amara had a cold that was mostly better but mostly was not fully, and she was tired in the specific way that treatment made her tired, a tiredness that lived in her bones rather than just her muscles. But Nicole had called 3 times and said it was just dinner, just the 4 of us. Come on, you never come anywhere anymore. And Zara had eventually said yes, because the alternative was another evening of Amara's knowing eyes asking wordless questions about the specific quality of her mother's tiredness. She had put on the black dress. She had done her makeup carefully. She had adjusted the wig in the mirror until it was perfect. She had kissed Amara goodbye. Amara had held her face in both hands and looked at her. "You look beautiful, Mama," she said. "Thank you, baby." Amara had looked at her for a moment longer. "The man who isn't scared is going to be there tonight," she said simply. Zara had looked at her daughter. "How do you know?" she said. "I just know," Amara said. She let go of her mother's face. "Don't be scared of him." Zara had gone to the restaurant. She had arrived to find Nicole already there with a Korean man in an expensive suit who stood when she entered the room with the automatic courtesy of someone for whom this was completely natural. His name was Kang Min-yi. He shook her hand. He held it 1 beat longer than necessary before releasing it. Not in a forward way. In the specific way of someone who has registered something and is taking an extra second to confirm it. She sat down. The dinner began. For 40 minutes, it was a normal dinner. Min Yi talked about the work. Zara asked questions that showed she understood the medical technology sector in a way that was not performative. She actually worked in a hospital. She understood the clinical side, and he had answered her follow-up questions with the specific engaged attention of someone who had not had this conversation with anyone in a long time. Nicole had redirected twice. Both times, Zara had let the redirect happen because it was not worth the energy. Both times Min Yi had let it happen for about 90 seconds before finding his way back to something Zara had said. Zara had noticed. She had not let herself think about what she had noticed. She had been focusing on the bread because she was tired, and bread helped with the nausea that sometimes arrived in the evenings without warning. She had not been focusing on Nicole. She had not seen Nicole's expression change across the table. She had not seen the specific calculation that moved through Nicole's face when Min Yi refilled Zara's water glass without being asked. She had not seen Nicole's hand move. She had felt the result. The specific cold sensation of absence where the wig had been. The rush of air on her bare scalp. The sound of 200 people going silent. She stood in the silence with the wig in her hands. She looked at Min Yi. He was not looking at her head. He was looking at Nicole. "Don't touch her," he said. He walked to her. He stood before her. He held out his hand for the wig. She gave it to him. He held it gently. He looked at her bare head. He looked at her face. He looked at her the way, and she understood this later, not in that moment, but later. A man looks at something he recognizes. "Are you all right?" he said. She said yes. He put the wig carefully back in her hands. He returned to his seat. He picked up his menu. Nicole was gone. The restaurant found its voice again. Zara sat down. She put the wig back on. She breathed. She looked at the bread. She looked at Min Yi. He was reading the menu, as though the world had continued normally. He looked up and caught her looking. He said, "The sea bass here is supposed to be excellent. Have you had it before?" She looked at this man. She felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been closed for 4 years and was opening against her will. "No," she said, "I haven't." "You should try it," he said. She ordered the sea bass. Subscribe right now, bestie, if you are new here, because this story is only just beginning, and what happens when this man meets Amara will stop your heart completely. Drop your city and the time it is where you are in the comments right now. I want to know who is watching. Hit that like button. Let's continue. They left the restaurant together because Nicole was gone and the evening had rearranged itself. On the pavement outside, Minyi said, "I'll get you a car." "I take the subway," she said. He looked at her. "It's 11 at night," he said. "I've been taking the subway at 11 at night in New York for 8 years," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "I'll walk you to the station," he said. She looked at him. She thought about saying no. She said, "All right." They walked 2 blocks. He did not ask about the wig. He did not ask about Nicole. He asked about the hospital. He asked what she had been working on that week. She told him. He asked follow-up questions. She answered them. At the subway entrance, she stopped. "Thank you," she said, "for what you did in there." He looked at her. "I didn't do anything," he said. "You picked it up," she said. "Anyone would have," he said. She looked at him. They both understood that this was not true. 200 people had stood there and said nothing. He had stood up. "My daughter would like you," she said. She didn't know why she said it. It came out before she had decided to say it. He looked at her. "How old is she?" "5. What's her name?" "Amara." He held her gaze. "I'd like to meet Amara," he said. She looked at this man. She thought about 4 years of closed. She thought about a 5-year-old saying the man who isn't scared is going to be there tonight. She thought about sea bass and a menu picked up while 200 people stared. She said, "I'll think about it." He nodded. He gave her his card. She went into the subway. She sat on the train all the way home and looked at the card and did not think about it. She thought about it the entire time. Amara was awake when she got home. She was sitting in the living room with her sketchbook, which meant she had climbed out of bed, which meant she had been waiting. "Mama," she said, "you saw him." It was not a question. Zara sat beside her daughter. "He was there," she said carefully. Amara looked at her sketchbook. "He has sad eyes," she said, "but they're not broken sad, they're waiting sad." Zara looked at her daughter. "What do you mean?" "Some people have sad eyes because something broke inside them and they gave up," Amara said. She turned a page. "He has sad eyes because he's waiting for something to make sense again. Those are different." Zara looked at the card in her hand. She looked at her daughter. "When did you get so wise?" she said. Amara looked at her. "Mama," she said. "Yes, baby." "You're allowed to let someone in," she said. "The cancer didn't take that away from you. You just think it did." The apartment was very quiet. Zara looked at her 5-year-old daughter. She felt the specific thing that Amara regularly did to her. The thing of being seen completely and accurately by someone who should not yet know how to see that deeply. "Go to bed," she said softly. "I know," Amara said. She closed her sketchbook, "but I wanted you to hear it first." She went to bed. Zara sat in the quiet living room and held the card and allowed herself, for the first time in 4 years, to think about the possibility of something. She called him 3 days later. Not to go on a date. To ask if he wanted to walk in Central Park on Saturday morning. She had reasoned, in the way she reasoned everything, that a walk in Central Park was not a date. It was a public outdoor activity that could end at any time without awkwardness. He had said yes immediately. She had told Amara. Amara had looked at her for a long moment and then said, "Can I come?" Zara had looked at her daughter. "This is not." "I know it's not a date," Amara said. "I just want to meet him." Zara had thought about this. She had thought about what it meant to introduce her daughter to a man she had met twice. She had thought about what it meant that her daughter already had opinions about a man she had never met. "Bring your jacket," she said. Minyi was waiting at the park entrance. He was wearing simple clothes, no suit, and he looked different in them. More ordinary, more reachable. He looked at Zara. Then he looked at Amara. Amara looked at him. She looked at him with those eyes for a full 4 seconds. Then she said, "You lost someone." Minyi went completely still. Zara reached for her daughter, Amara. "It's all right," Minyi said. His voice had changed. He crouched down to Amara's level. He looked at her. Yes, he said, I did. Amara tilted her head. She would want you to stop waiting, she said. The person you lost, she would want you to stop standing in the same place. Min Yi looked at this 5-year-old girl. His jaw was tight. He breathed carefully. How do you know that? He said. Amara considered this. Because people who love you don't want you to be sad forever, she said. They just want you to be okay. She took his hand. She started walking into the park. She was holding his hand with the complete practical confidence of a child who has decided someone belongs to them. Min Yi stood up. He looked at Zara. His eyes were wet. He was not pretending they weren't. Zara looked at him. She looked at her daughter, already pulling him forward. She walked to his other side. The three of them walked into Central Park. The weeks that followed were the most careful and most extraordinary of Zara's recent life. Min Yi did not push. He was present without being overwhelming. He texted in the mornings with the specific consideration of someone who understood that she had a complicated schedule and asked rather than assumed. He appeared on Saturdays for the park walks that had become their routine without anyone formally declaring them a routine. He asked about the hospital. He asked about Amara's week. He asked about her in the way of someone who had decided to know her completely and was willing to go at whatever pace she needed. He did not ask about the wig. He did not ask about the cancer. She understood he was waiting. She was not ready. What she had not anticipated was Amara. Amara had decided on Min Yi with the complete irreversibility of a 5-year-old who has made a determination. She drew him. She drew him constantly. Not as he was in his suit, but as she saw him somehow. The version of him that existed underneath the controlled surface. A man sitting at a window. A man walking alone. A man looking at something far away. On the 4th Saturday walk, Min Yi had seen the sketchbook. Can I look? He said. Amara handed it to him. He turned the pages. He looked at the drawings. He was quiet for a long time. He reached a page near the back. It was a drawing of 3 people walking. A woman, a man, a small girl between them holding both their hands. He looked at the drawing for a long moment. When did you draw this? He said. Before I met you, Amara said. He looked up at her. She looked back at him with those eyes. He looked at Zara. Zara looked at her daughter. She had not seen this drawing before. She looked at it. 3 people walking. She felt the thing she had been managing for 4 years try to close again. She breathed through it. She let it stay open. The conversation about the cancer happened on a Wednesday evening. Not planned. Not in the way she had imagined telling him, with the right words prepared and the right moment chosen. It happened because she was tired. The specific bone-deep treatment, tired that she could not always hide. He had come for dinner. It was the first time he had come for dinner, rather than meeting outside. He had brought food, groceries, not takeout. He had cooked in her kitchen with the focused concentration of someone who was good at it and knew it. Amara had supervised from the kitchen table and offered opinions that he had received with complete seriousness. After dinner, Amara had gone to bed. Zara had sat on the sofa. She had meant to stay alert. She had fallen asleep. When she woke up, the apartment was clean. The dishes were done. The food was put away. Min Yi was sitting in the chair across from the sofa reading one of Amara's books because it was the thing closest to him. He looked up when she stirred. She looked at him. She looked at her apartment. At the clean kitchen, visible through the doorway. At this man sitting in her chair reading her daughter's book because she had fallen asleep on the sofa and he had not left. She said, I have cancer. He looked at her. I know, he said. She went still. How? I work in medical technology, he said quietly. I recognize the medication in your bag 3 weeks ago, the specific combination. He paused. I have been waiting for you to tell me. She looked at him. You weren't going to ask. It wasn't mine to ask, he said. It was yours to tell. She held his gaze. My daughter's father left, she said. When I was diagnosed the first time, Amara was 7 months old. Minyi was quiet. This is the second time, she said. The cancer came back 6 months ago. I'm in treatment now. She looked at her hands. I wear the wig because I didn't want people to treat me differently, to look at me and see only the illness. He was very still. I have never seen only the illness, he said. I want you to know that. She looked at him. I know, she said. My wife died of breast cancer, he said, 4 years ago. The apartment was completely silent. She looked at him. He looked back at her. Both of them sitting with a specific weight of a truth that had been waiting to be shared. I know what it costs, he said quietly. The treatment, the exhaustion, the specific kind of brave it takes to keep going. I watched someone do it. He paused. And I know that what I felt watching Jae-yeon fight was never anything close to pity. It was the closest thing to reverence I have ever felt. Zara looked at this man. She felt the thing that had been closed for 4 years open completely. Not dramatically. Just fully. I'm scared, she said. I know, he said. Not of the cancer, she said. Of this, of letting someone in and then. I know, he said again. He stood up. He crossed to the sofa. He sat beside her. He took her hand. She looked at their joined hands. She looked at him. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I want you to hear that and believe it. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I am not going to be someone who leaves when it gets difficult. She looked at him. How do I know that? She said. He held her gaze. You don't, he said honestly. Not yet, but I am going to spend however long it takes showing you. She breathed. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He stayed completely still and let her. Outside the apartment, New York continued its Wednesday evening, completely indifferent to the specific moment, happening on the 14th floor. Amara, who had been in her bed listening, smiled at the ceiling. She had known. She had always known. She closed her eyes. Don't you go anywhere. This story is going to go somewhere that will make you cry and cheer in the same breath. Hit that like button right now. Drop your city and the time it is where you are watching from. Subscribe if you haven't already. We are not done yet. Mrs. Kang did not like Zara. She said so clearly, and without apology to Min-yi on the morning after he told her about Zara. She is sick, his mother said. You have already watched someone die. You cannot do this again. Min-yi looked at his mother. He thought about this for a moment. Then he said, I watched Jae-yeon fight for 4 years with the most extraordinary courage I have ever seen. I am not going to dishonor what she showed me by running from the same thing. His mother looked at him. She looked away. She did not say anything else. But she did not approve. The meeting between Mrs. Kang and Amara happened by accident. Amara had come with Zara to the penthouse on a Sunday afternoon. Min-yi had invited them for lunch. Mrs. Kang had been in her room and was not supposed to be part of the afternoon. She had come out for water. She had found a 5-year-old sitting at her kitchen table drawing. She had stood in the doorway. Amara had looked up. Hello, Amara said. Mrs. Kang looked at this child. Hello, she said, in English. Amara tilted her head. You don't feel well, she said. Mrs. Kang went still. Your stomach, Amara said. It hurts all the time, not sharp pain, like something is always wrong. Mrs. Kang looked at this child. How do you know that? She said. Amara considered. You hold yourself like it hurts, she said. Right here. She touched her own midsection. And you're very thin, but not because you want to be, because eating hurts. Mrs. Kang looked at her. She crossed the kitchen slowly. She sat down across from Amara. What is your name? She said. Amara. Mrs. Kang looked at the drawing Amara was working on. What are you drawing? Amara turned the sketchbook. It was a drawing of Mrs. Kang. Not the thin, exhausted version of her that existed right now. A version of her that was fuller, stronger. Standing straight. Mrs. Kang looked at the drawing for a long time. Is that me? She said. It's the you that's coming, Amara said, when you start eating real food. Mrs. Kang looked at the child. What do you mean real food? Food that isn't made by 40 people who are scared of you, Amara said simply. She picked up her crayon. Food made by someone who just wants you to feel better. Mrs. Kang was very quiet. What kind of food? She said. Amara looked at her. My mama makes pepper soup, she said. When I'm sick, it always makes me feel better. She thought about this. Your stomach needs something gentle, not fancy, just real. Mrs. Kang sat with this for a moment. Your mother, she said carefully. She is the woman Min Yi. Yes, Amara said, she is. Mrs. Kang looked at the drawing of herself. She looked at this child. She had spent 2 years refusing most food from her staff. She had not been able to explain why nothing appealed to her. Amara was looking at her with those eyes. Would you ask her, Mrs. Kang said, your mother, if she would make her soup? Amara smiled. I already told her you might need it, she said. She brought the ingredients. Zara made the pepper soup in Mrs. Kang's kitchen. Not a grand version, not a restaurant version. The version her grandmother had made in Georgia. Simple and clean and warm. The version that had been made in her family for 3 generations for people who needed something real. She made it quietly while Mrs. Kang sat at the kitchen table and watched. They did not talk much. Mrs. Kang watched her hands. The specific practiced movements of someone making something they have made 1,000 times. The soup was done in 40 minutes. Zara put a bowl in front of Mrs. Kang. Mrs. Kang looked at it. She looked at the steam rising from it. She picked up the spoon. She tasted it. She was quiet. She took another spoonful. And another. She finished the bowl. Zara sat across from her. Mrs. Kang looked at the empty bowl. She looked at Zara. For the first time since Zara had known her, Mrs. Kang's expression was not closed. More, she said. Over the following 3 weeks, Mrs. Kang ate. Not enormous quantities, but consistently. Something about the pepper soup had reached whatever had been refusing food for 7 months. Her gastroenterologist could not explain it clinically. He noted improved appetite and continued the monitoring. Min Yi found out from Mrs. Song, the housekeeper who told him what Amara had said to his mother that Sunday afternoon. He found Zara on a Tuesday evening. She was putting Amara to bed. He waited in the living room. When she came out, he said, Amara told my mother her stomach needed something real, not fancy. Zara looked at him. She said it the day she met her, she said. He looked at his hands. He looked at her. My mother ate 3 bowls yesterday, he said. Zara was quiet. She's been sick for 2 years, he said. Nobody could reach her. He paused. Your 5-year-old reached her in 10 minutes. He stood up. He crossed the room. He stood before her. Zara, he said. She looked at him. I love you, he said. Simply. Without preamble. Without the careful management of a man deciding how much to show. Just the truth. She looked at him. She thought about Derek and a diagnosis and a door closing. She thought about 4 years of managing alone. She thought about a 5-year-old saying the man who isn't scared is going to be there tonight. She thought about a restaurant and 200 silent people and 1 man who stood up. Don't touch her. She stepped forward. She reached up and took off the wig. She stood before him without it. She had not done this in front of anyone since the treatment began. She stood completely still. He looked at her. At her bare head. At her face. At all of her. His expression did not change. Not 1 degree. He raised his hand. He placed it gently against the side of her bare head. His palm warm and certain. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, he said. She felt the thing she had been holding for 4 years release completely. She stepped into him. He put both arms around her. She pressed her face against his chest. And she cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind. The real kind. The kind that had been waiting since a man had said, I can't do this, and left a woman alone with a 7-month-old daughter and a diagnosis and a future she was going to have to build entirely herself. He held her through all of it. He did not tell her to stop. He did not tell her it would be okay. He just held her. And that was exactly right. From Amara's bedroom came a small voice. Mama. Zara laughed. It came out wet and real and completely hers. We're okay, baby, she called. A pause. I know, Amara said. I just wanted to say good night to Min Yi. Min Yi looked at Zara. She wiped her face. She laughed again. Come say good night then, she called. Small feet on the floor. Amara appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. She looked at her mother. She looked at Min Yi. She looked at Zara's bare head. She said nothing about it. She crossed the room. She hugged Min Yi around his middle. He put his arms around her. Good night, Min Yi, she said. Good night, Amara, he said. She looked up at him. Don't go anywhere, she said. He looked at this 5-year-old. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She studied him for a moment. Good, she said. She went back to bed. Nicole's reckoning came quietly and completely. She had not expected consequences. She had expected, in the way of people who have always gotten away with things, that the restaurant incident would simply be managed, and that she would retain her position in the social circle she had been cultivating, and that Zara would absorb it the way Zara absorbed everything. She had not anticipated that Min Yi would know everyone in the room. She had not anticipated that the story would travel in the specific way that stories travel through certain New York social circles. She had not anticipated that by the Monday morning after the restaurant, the charity board she sat on would have questions about her judgment. She had not anticipated that her supervisor at New York Presbyterian would call her in for a conversation about professional conduct and confidentiality after learning that she had disclosed a colleague's private medical information in a social context. She had not anticipated any of it. She called Zara. Zara let it ring. She called again. Zara texted, I hope you're well, Nicole. We're done. She put the phone down. She went to make breakfast for Amara. Mrs. Kang asked Zara to teach her the pepper soup recipe on a Thursday morning. They stood in the kitchen together. Zara showed her. Not quickly. Not impatiently. With the specific generosity of someone who understands that food is also history and history deserves to be passed carefully. Mrs. King wrote down every step. She asked questions. Zara answered them. At the end, Mrs. Kang looked at what she had written. She looked at Zara. Your grandmother taught you this, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Zara said. In Georgia, I was 7. Mrs. Kang looked at the recipe. I was wrong about you, she said. Zara looked at her. Mrs. Kang did not look up from the recipe. I looked at your situation, and I saw only the difficulty, she said. I did not look at you. She was quiet. I'm looking now, she said. Zara stood in this woman's kitchen. She thought about what it cost a woman like Mrs. Kang to say those words. She thought about all the people who had looked at her situation and seen only difficulty. She thought about Amara drawing Mrs. Kang as the version of herself that was coming. Thank you, Zara said. Mrs. Kang finally looked up. She nodded once. She went back to the recipe. She made the soup herself that evening. It was not quite right, but it was close. The treatment ended on a Tuesday in September. The scans were clear. Her oncologist said the words Zara had been waiting 18 months to hear. No evidence of disease. She sat in the oncologist's office on the Upper East Side of Manhattan and heard those 4 words and felt the specific thing that a person feels when something they have been fighting for a very long time has been won. She called Min Yi. He picked up on the first ring. She told him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm coming. He was at the office in 11 minutes. She was still sitting in the waiting room when he arrived. He sat beside her. He took her hand. They sat in the waiting room of an oncologist's office on a Tuesday afternoon in September and said nothing for a while. Then she said, she's going to be okay. Amara is going to have her mother. Min Yi held her hand. Yes, he said, she is. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I want to take Amara to Georgia, she said. To see my grandmother. I want her to learn the pepper soup recipe from the source. He was quiet for a moment. I'd like to come, he said, if that's all right. She looked at him. She thought about Georgia and her grandmother and the specific warmth of a kitchen where everything important had been learned. She thought about bringing this man into that. My grandmother is going to have a lot of opinions, she said. I look forward to it, he said. She laughed. It was the full kind. He proposed on a Saturday morning in Central Park. Not with grand ceremony. In the spot where they had walked the first time, the three of them, where Amara had taken his hand and started walking and everything had begun. Amara was there. She had known. Of course she had known. She was standing beside him when Zara arrived at the park entrance, and she was holding something behind her back. Zara looked at her daughter. She looked at Minyi. He was holding a ring. Simple, real, the kind that said, I thought about who you are. Amara pulled her hands from behind her back. She was holding a drawing. She held it up. It was the drawing of 3 people walking. The one she had drawn before she met him. Zara looked at the drawing. She looked at her daughter. She looked at Minyi. He held the ring. He did not say a speech. He said, stay. She looked at this man. She thought about a restaurant and 200 people and one person who stood up. She thought about a Wednesday evening and a bowl of soup and don't touch her. She thought about a Tuesday morning in a waiting room and I'm coming. She thought about 4 years of closed and everything it had taken to open. She took the ring. She put it on. She looked at Amara. Amara was already hugging her before she could reach down. They stood in Central Park on a Saturday morning, the 3 of them, and the city moved around them completely unaware of everything that had happened to arrive at this specific ordinary, extraordinary morning. And that is where this story ends. Not in a restaurant where a wig was pulled off in front of 200 people. Not in a hospital waiting room with 4 words and a phone call. Not in a kitchen in a Korean billionaire's penthouse where a 5-year-old told a sick woman her stomach needed something real. But in Central Park on a Saturday morning with a ring and a drawing and 3 people who took the longest, most impossible road to standing beside each other. Zara Collins had spent 4 years believing that her illness made her something to be survived rather than chosen. She had been wrong. She had been wrong in the most complete and irreversible way. Because Kang Min-yi had looked at her in a restaurant while 200 people stared and had not seen illness. He had seen her. Specifically. Completely. From the very first moment. And Amara Collins, who had drawn the 3 of them walking before she had ever met the man who would become her father, who had told a sick woman her stomach needed something real, who had said the man who isn't scared is going to be there tonight with the complete certainty of someone who simply knows things. She had been right. She was always right. And Nicole, who had looked at her friend and seen a competition to be managed. She had a new job now. In a different hospital. In a different borough. Where nobody knew her the way people tend to stop knowing you when you rip a wig off a woman in a restaurant because you wanted her seat. And Mrs. Kang, who had looked at a sick black woman and seen only difficulty. She made the pepper soup every Thursday. She was not yet as good as Zara's grandmother. She was working on it. Now I want to speak to you directly. If you are watching this and you have ever been made to feel that your health, your illness, your struggle, your diagnosis makes you less worthy of love, this story was made for you. If you have ever taken off your wig in private and wondered if anyone could love what was underneath, this story was made for you. If you have ever been the woman standing in the restaurant holding the thing that was taken from you, deciding whether to stay or disappear, this story was made for you. You are not too much. You are not too sick. You are not too complicated. You are not the wrong choice. The right person does not see your illness first. They see you first. All of you. And they stay. Subscribe right now. Hit the like button. Share this video with a woman in your life who needs to hear that she is worth being chosen exactly as she is. Drop your city and the time it is for you right now in the comments. I want to hear from every woman in the United States, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in Ghana, in Nigeria, and everywhere else in this world where this story landed today. And one final thing. If you watched this entire story and you don't subscribe, don't like, don't comment, and don't share, that silence puts you on Nicole's side. The woman who looked at her friend carrying something heavy and decided the heaviness was an opportunity. We know that is not who you are. So hit subscribe, hit like, drop your city in the comments, share this story. Because Zara's story deserves to be heard. And Afro-Korean love stories will keep bringing you more. Thank you for watching.